Welcome back.
All right.
Off the Map Games, the show. So we're going to continue our One Ring coverage. Today we're going to talk about understanding combat and dice rolls in the One Ring.
The mechanics.
And at first glance, combat in the One Ring looks pretty familiar. Roll to hit, roll damage. But underneath there's three completely different layers of danger happening at once. So once you understand these layers, combat is actually very fast compared to other RPGs to run, and every hit, feels like it's got impact on the storytelling. Yeah. So let's talk about, just a simple attack. So we're just going to use the dice, there's a couple of different dice that you're going to use. But every time you roll, you're going to roll a d12, and it's a feat die. It's got the numbers 1 through 10 on it, and then it's got the Eye of Sauron and the Gandalf glyph. And if you roll the Gandalf glyph, you succeed every time. Mm-hmm. If you roll the Eye of Sauron, you get 0 on your feat die.
Right.
And then you might add additional d6s. Mm-hmm. And these d6s are just regular d6s. You'll notice 1, 2, and 3 are hollowed out, and those also have an impact if you're weary. But the main thing for just getting started is the 6 has what's called a Tengwa symbol on it, which is an elf glyph, and it means that you've had a success. And if you roll multiple 6s, then you go from having if you just hit your target number with the dice you roll, then that's a success, excuse me. If you get a 6 on one of your d6s, then you can go from a success to a great success if you get 1 6, and if you get 2 or more 6s, you get an extraordinary success. Mm-hmm. And that can activate a cultural ability, or it can mean that you are potentially going to wound the opponent, or the adversary. We call them adversaries. There's really no complicated initiative order in this game. It basically, unless the lore master tells you differently, you go. All the players go first, and then all the adversaries go, and that's one round. Now there might be a specific scenario where you got surprised and the adversaries get to go first, or what have you. The other thing is you generally have a conversation as a party about what you're going to do during your turn so that you can maximize your dice rolls. So I don't have, as a lore master, I don't have to go, okay, what do you do, what do you do, what do you do? Yep. I go, okay, now it's your guys' turn. You guys talk amongst yourselves and then tell me the order that you'd like to do things in, and then we'll educate your party's actions.
Which can be kind of like how you're going to fight.
And that might
I'm
matter.
going to get in front of you with my shield,
like
and you're going to throw the spear.
If you get an advantage, if you go first and then you pass that advantage on to the next person, you can kind of balance that stuff out. Yeah. So let's just do a simple attack. I'll just say this warg wolf here is being obstinate, and I've got this character that's going to try to attack, and we're just going to do it like a normal stance, and the wolf is right there attacking. And so let's say I need a 15 to hit this warg, and the lore master will always give you a target number, and in this case,
here, it's right here. Same character.
Oh, great. Okay. And in this case, I'm going to use my sword, which can do 4 damage if I hit. I would if I'm just rolling a straight sword strike, with this character, my target number is 15. But if the enemy has a parry of 1 or 2, then it would be 16 or 17. Mm-hmm. So it's that much more difficult to hit them. Now, by the way, this is about landing the blow, okay? And that's important in this game to make that distinction, and I'll tell you why in a minute. So, yeah, that's right. We also have combat proficiencies. So you can either be good with axes, bows, spears, or swords. I'm using my short sword, so I get 3 d6s, right? If I was using a spear, I would only get 1 d6 additional. So I have to beat, let's say that this warg has a parry of 1. Mm-hmm. So I take my strength target number 15 and I add the 1 parry for 16. I have to get a 16 or better. Since I'm using my sword, I get 3 d6s instead of any other. And then I would roll that die. And so I got a 3 on my feat die, and then I got a 3, a 1, and a 6. So I had a great success. And then my total is 3, 4, 10, 13, less than 17. So
No.
I missed.
Right.
So the great success is really irrelevant in this case. So that's me trying to attack the warg.
Now, if you had though, like if you got the Gandalf rune,
Then that would have succeeded anyway.
Auto.
Right.
Or if you had the Eye of Sauron, this basically is nothing, and then you're only counting on whatever proficiencies you have with those D6s.
Right. And then I might have a piercing characteristic with my weapon.
Right.
In which case, I would be able to roll to see if I got a wound because I got a great success.
Yep.
And if I don't have a piercing characteristic with my weapon, I need an extraordinary success, which means I need 2 6s on my D6 to potentially give a wound to the enemy. Now, the nice thing about wounding adversaries is most adversaries have a might rating, which is what they use, it's different, of 1. Which means that if you get 1 wound in,
They're usually
dead.
weaker.
Yeah.
Yep.
It's a little harder the other way, and we'll get to that here in a second. So anyway, that's a simple attack. And every combat follows that same pattern. So let's talk about like when an adversary attacks you. Okay, so in this case, it's a little different because I've got...
She's like an orc soldier or something.
Okay, sure, whatever you want. You don't want to use the warg? All right.
No, let's get a little spicier now.
Let's add the orc in. All right, so now we got an orc coming in, and she's getting attacked by the orc. Now, I've got a coat of mail, which gives me 4 dice of protection, and I've got a shield, which gives me an additional parry, right? So basically, all that adds up to my parry rating, which is 16 base, which comes from my cultural traits, plus my parry, so 17 total parry, and that's from having a shield. So if I'm not carrying the shield, I go back to 16. And then I also have 4D protection if a hit lands, and I'll explain that in a minute. So now the orc attacks. So the orc is going to attack with what? The soldier?
Yeah, orc soldier.
All right, so he's going to attack with a scimitar, which is going to give him 3 dice, and of course the feat die. Now some DMs or some lore masters play the feat die the opposite with the enemies, the adversaries, which is to say, if I roll the Eye of Sauron, then I automatically succeed.
The symbols themselves.
And the Gandalf symbol is a 0 unless I'm weary.
I would do that.
Yeah, I think that's a fun way to play, so we're going to do that. All right, so I got a 7 on my feat die, 1, 5, and 2, and my parry rating is 17. So I need to beat 17. So 7, 8, 8 and 7 is 15. So I did not beat 17.
Nope.
So my character was able to parry, and that's the end. That's it. It just doesn't happen, basically. Now let's say, for example, that instead of rolling, like that, I rolled a higher roll. So that's, like 13 and 7 is 20. So that passes 17, so that means I hit. Then the GM would tell me, okay, when he rolls with a scimitar, if you look at the adversary's stat block, it'll have a number, a slash, and another number. And in this case, it says 3/16. And what that means is I do 3 endurance damage to the character, and if I pierce, I have a target number of 16 that they have to beat to prevent the piercing wound.
Oh, okay.
Now in this case, I use the scimitar, and the scimitar weapon does not say piercing or pierce next to it.
No.
And since I only got 1 6 on my D6s, I do not have the opportunity to see if I'm going to deliver a wound.
But if you had a spear,
let's just
potentially.
say that I rolled 2 6s, or I used a weapon that did say pierce, and I only got 1 6. Now that I've got 2, I can say, oh, I think I might have pierced you. And what happens is the defender now rolls a protection test. So you take 1 feat die plus the success dice from your armor. right? So in this case, I've got 4 success dice associated with my armor. So, because she's wearing a coat of mail, which is pretty heavy armor. So that means that in order to beat my target piercing number of, what was it? 16. I'm going to roll, as the character, not as the lore master, 4 additional d6s with my feat die. So I have a really good chance of not getting pierced.
Right.
You know.
That was looking bad on that one. That's good.
Oh, so that's an automatic success. I rolled the Gandalf glyph. But let's say I didn't roll the Gandalf glyph. Let's say I roll a 1, which is the worst possible roll on the feat die. Well, actually, the Sauron symbol is. But let's say I rolled a 1. I've got 6 and 4 is 10, and 4 is 14, and 5 is 19. I still passed my piercing number.
Yep.
So that means that I didn't get wounded. And if I'd rolled less than that, then I would now have a wound, and I would mark my wound, and I can take as many wounds as I have a heart rating for before I'm dying.
Right.
So I have a heart rating of 5, so I can take 5 wounds before I'm dying. The 5th wound, I'll start dying. But like you can see how in any combat you could potentially end up getting a piercing blow, and that will accumulate over time, and you can't recover your wounds outside of a fellowship phase. You can't just long rest your way and go, oh, I'm not wounded anymore. You still have, you know, like a major gash in your side, and they bandaged it up, but it's not going to be you're not okay.
Yeah.
You know. So that's really it in a nutshell. Like I mean, it's not you can see how it goes really fast, but there's a couple of things I want to talk about here. You're not rolling to defend yourself specifically. You're rolling to find out if you defended yourself with a parry. So like like in other games you have a different number depending on how tough you are to hit, but hitting is hitting, and then damage is rolled separately. In this game, the damage is always going to be the same amount for that monster with that weapon. And so you just find out whether or not the hit gets through or not.
Yeah.
But it's not even that bad a blow. It's like literally like you got hit on your shield or you got hit on your armor with the sword. So you're not taking like mortal damage per se.
Right.
Unless you get a piercing.
Yeah.
So it goes down slowly against your endurance. 3, 5, like you don't have, like anything hitting for 15 damage. And if you get a crit hit, it doesn't like double, triple the effect on your endurance like it does in other games. It just, it's just like, oh, you might have gotten a wound, and we'll figure that out.
Yeah.
So a couple of things go into your parry score. The main thing is really your heroic culture, and then your wits, and then if you have a shield. And this is all part of character creation, but I just want you to know what goes into giving you your parry score. You might also get other bonuses from like a virtue or a special ability. But the main thing here is that your parry score has nothing to do with your armor. You notice I didn't check, like the only thing that affected my parry score about my armor was I was carrying a shield, a buckler. And that will add 1 to my parry. That's it. The fact that I'm wearing chainmail doesn't make me harder to hit.
No.
Because, like I'm still standing there. That's different. So I said earlier, like, the endurance hit is the lower number, and then the slash number is the target number for any piercing. So what that means is, if you think of your endurance as your stamina or your fatigue, the ability to just keep fighting, there's just always going to be a tax on that every time somebody lands a hit on you.
Yeah, I mean, even if you put up a shield, you're getting whacked against that. That's going to.
But this is something that is more time sensitive.
Okay.
You can recover endurance very quickly. You can't recover from wounds very quickly.
No.
So that's the other part. And then finally, the last major thing before we get into the engagement rings is that if you do run out of endurance, it's because of a couple of things that could have happened. One is, let's say I had to fight with something that I'm not very proficient with. So like I needed like a 17 to hit, or sorry, a 15 to hit. Well, it would be a 17 with a parry score probably to hit something, but I'm only going to get to roll 1 die with it, right? And the best I can get on the feat die is a 10 or an automatic success.
Right.
Right. So that means I need a 17. I'm going to get 1 to 6 on this. So
you need the.
So I can't actually succeed. The best roll I'm going to get, the only way I'm going to succeed with
the auto success.
is the Gandalf roll.
Yeah.
Right. So I can do something else though. I can spend hope, and on this character, I have 13 hope right now. So I can say, okay, I'm now at 12 hope, and I can add another D6. So I can sort of tap into my reserves of, like, willpower.
We got this. Yeah.
And I can add that in. So that will reduce my hope.
Yep.
Right? So then I roll and I see if I passed. And in this case, I actually failed anyway. Oh no, I failed by 1, yeah, so I didn't pass. But I will burn my hope to do that. That's really all I can do. And remember, if my hope gets below my shadow, then I'm miserable. So I bring that up because I mentioned, there's a physical track, how much energy I have, that's endurance. And then there's this emotional track, how positive and hopeful I am.
Yeah.
And that affects my fighting, and that's shadow or hope. When you lose enough endurance that you're out of endurance effectively, your load and your max endurance are offset by additional endurance debits, basically, that you incurred when you were fighting, so that your endurance goes to 0. Now you're weary. And as soon as you get weary, the dice change a bit. And what that means is every time you roll a d6, there's 3 numbers that are hollowed out on the dice, 1, 2, and 3. Those all count as zeros now.
Yeah.
So that's a big hit. And it's not just for combat. Like you might be rolling a test for some other thing, and those are still zeros as long as you're weary.
So you need a 4, 5, or 6 for anything to
For
count.
anything to count, yeah. And it's a 50-50 shot, you're going to get nothing.
Yeah.
Yeah, so it really affects your d6s a lot.
But then miserable.
Well, miserable relates to shadow, and like when you're fighting, you might decide to add additional d6s by spending hope, and you might gain shadow by doing misdeeds, by seeing some awful shadow, like force do something. Like if you run into like a Nazgul or something, you might gain shadow from that. And basically, if your shadow score exceeds your hope score, then you become what's called miserable. And miserable affects the feat die, doesn't affect the d6s. But what it does to the feat die is, I mentioned earlier that if you roll the Gandalf rune, it's an automatic success. If you roll the Eye of Sauron, it's a 0, unless you're miserable. If you're miserable and you roll the Eye of Sauron, it's an automatic fail. Yeah. So pretty straightforward. Cool. But really just reinforces something we mentioned earlier in the other session, that combat is expensive from a impact on your player's capabilities. So you don't go into combat lightly in this game. You can come out of combat with a serious wound that you can't recover from for a long time. And those can accumulate and end up killing you, even if your endurance is fine. And the more damage you take or psychological stress you take, the less effective you become as a player.
Yeah.
All of these really fit into the theme really well, which is fun. And having that dual track, your physical capabilities, endurance related, weariness, and the psychological load, hope and shadow on 2 tracks is super fun, because you can be kind of a very altruistic character, but you don't really get into a lot of combat.
Yeah.
So, you kind of have to do both. It encourages you to be a well-rounded character, which is, I think, really good for the theming. And the last thing I want to talk about in combat, because we've really covered everything, like I said, this was very much more streamlined, is the engagement rings. So if you're used to playing more dungeon crawly kind of RPGs, you're used to having very complex maps to show you what can happen during an encounter. And the One Ring, and actually even in the D&D system, the Lord of the Rings role-playing, you can use this system if you prefer it. But in the One Ring, you pretty much always use this system. You actually do combat encounters on these rings. And there's 3 different sort of settings and rearward. And effectively, when you go into combat, the first thing you do is figure out how far apart your forces are, and whether or not you're going to have the ability to like volley a ranged shot in while you close distance to begin combat. So that's usually the first thing: is does anybody have any long range shots they want to take?
Fire your arrows.
Yeah, and this is like, like Legolas, like shooting off arrows when you're nowhere near the other party. And then you close, and as you close, you decide as a party where you're going to stand on the engagement rings. And there's 3 rings, and then there's a rearward stance. So I'm going to start with forward, open, defensive, and rearward. And rearward is where you would put somebody that's only going to do ranged attacks. Effectively, once you decide to engage, like let's say I've got my, here, give me that archer. I've got an elf archer, I've got a barding with a spear, I've got a dwarf with an axe, and I've got my little hobbit thief, right? So my 4 characters are coming up on, give me a couple of orcs, just 2 orcs, really simple.
You got it, works.
I'll use this. Here he is.
Yeah.
And I'll say this guy too, this goblin archer, right? So I would probably say, okay, I'm going to put my dwarf forward. I'm going to leave my elf archer rearward. I'm going to put my barding in an open position, and I'm going to put my hobbit in a defensive position. And this will affect things they can do during the combat turn. You get an extra d6 on your attacks, but the enemy also gets an extra d6 on attacks against you.
Because you're a bit reckless.
You're putting yourself out in the front. You're basically trying to draw fire. So your more tanky character is more likely to go into a forward position.
Boromir.
In the open position, you neither gain nor lose dice. And in the rearward position, you lose a die, but enemies also lose a die against you. And you don't get melee combat to rearward. They only can attack you at ranged, which is why the number of enemies is important. Now, you also have certain combat actions you can do in each position. In the forward position, you can intimidate your foes. In the open position, you can rally. And in the rearward position, you can
prepared shot.
You can do a prepared shot. No, that's rearward. I'm sorry, defensive. You can take the protect companion action. And so this kind of creates a little bit of a dynamic between the different rings. Okay, so it's not just the die; it's also you have an additional capability. So in the forward position, it's intimidated foes. So you can basically make an awe roll, and on a success, the enemy's morale has been shaken, and the opponent's might, all the opponents with might 1 are made weary for the length of the round. And if you get a great success, at least 1 6 on your d6 for your awe roll, then anybody with might 2 suffers the penalty. And if you have an extraordinary success, every adversary is affected. So that can really change the tide of battle, because remember, even if the adversaries are weary, they don't get any roll points for 1, 2, or 3 on the d6s. That can really nerf a roll. If you're in the open stance, you can rally your companions, and you would make an enhearten skill check. And by the way, these are very straightforward. Each of the 3 skills has strength is includes the awe skill. And if I've got a check mark next to that, then I have proficiency with it. And then the number of check marks I have on the diamonds tells me how many d6s I roll.
Extra.
So very simple. And the target number is just whatever the target number is for the main attribute. So, at any rate, with the enhearten roll, I can effectively add another die to a hero in a forward stance. So, I can.
You're boosting him up.
Yeah. So he's gaining 1 already, and I can give him another one that the enemy doesn't get.
Yep.
And then protect companion. I would roll an athletics check, and this is basically me just trying to knock things out of the way from the other. And any attack aimed at that protected player if I pass the target number roll, and I'm rolling for an athletics check, which is a strength check. So for every, so for success, the enemy loses 1 die on their roll against your armor, or your parry, excuse me. And then for each great success or extraordinary success, you continue to lose dice, basically. Mm-hmm. And then finally, the prepare shot, the player hero makes a scan roll, and scanning is part of wits, and effectively, that scan roll, if it succeeds, will add another D6 to their attack roll for their ranged attack.
Yep.
And if they have a great success, every additional D6 on the D6 roll for their scan roll adds another die to their attack roll. So pretty simple. And this is so fast. I can't even tell you. The one thing about the game is you don't go into combat lightly, but the combat's over very quickly compared to other systems I've played, because a lot of the balance of the game falls into which ring you're in,
yep,
and then what do the dice do.
And you know what you're good at, so you kind of tend to know who should be where in certain.
So it's each round, if you will, of combat, depending on your stance, you may decide, I'm not going to try to hit anybody, I'm going to protect my companion in a rearward stance. Or I'm not going to shoot an arrow this turn, I'm going to do a prepared shot. You can do the action. Yeah, so it's one or the other. But you usually decide how you're going to use your extra abilities from your rings, and then you just run the combat. And then the combat comes back at you really the same way. Now, the rings don't affect the adversary's combat at all, though. Like, there's no, there might be a special action that they can do that's on their stat sheet, but it's nothing to do with the engagement rings. And that's just, and then it's really just very simple. Now, one of the things about the combat, is just back to what we talked about earlier. I'm not rolling against a target number on a stat sheet for my orc like I am as a player character trying to hit the orc. I am rolling against your parry score. And then if that hit gets through, then your armor might come into play if I have a potential opportunity to pierce you. That's it.
Cool.
Very straightforward. So that's the combat system. It's very streamlined. You actually use a similar set of mechanics for the council phase when you're negotiating with people, although there's no rearward and forward and any of that stuff. But really, really fast combat. And I love this ring system so much that I actually got the Moria book for the Lord of the Rings role-playing, which includes a whole little sidebar and the ring map using the D&D SRD rules. So instead of adding a die, there's some other mechanic, and I don't remember what they are. It's much, much quicker to use the one ring dice with the engagement rings, but you can actually run combat with engagement rings in the D&D version as well, the SRD D&D rule set as well. So pretty cool.
Sweet.
That's combat, and how the physical side of combat and the mental side of combat work together to make a very streamlined, fun gameplay. A lot of fun. There's, obviously, many more things we could talk about this game, and maybe we'll come up with some additional topics in the future. But I just want to close with, we're not trying to simulate tactical warfare. There's rings here instead of maps that say, oh, you're 5 feet out of range. So it's a little bit more streamlined there. And that's because of the narrative focus. And combat being expensive from a storytelling perspective makes it less dependent on, are we simulating the combat as accurately as we could be, which helps. Heroes don't lose because they suddenly reach 0 hit points very often in this game. They become tired, they become wounded, and they're just less effective. And eventually, you stop playing them. You're like, this guy's got to go onto a fellowship phase anyway.
Send them out.
They just basically, that's really it. They push themselves farther than they should, which to me really enriches the storytelling. Like if you're going to have to wait, if you decide to go gangbusters in the first couple of chapters, if you will, And now you're beefy, tanky character. You're a month into like the 6 or 9 months of adventuring you were planning on doing before you started your fellowship phase. You're not even to Rivendell yet, and your rangers only got like 1 or 2 wounds left. You know what I mean? Like,
it's a rough time.
They're going to have a bad day.
Yeah.
So that's why I like that 2-layer system so much. And I'm just going to repeat what I said earlier, that like, in this game, more than any other RPG I've ever played, I definitely noticed the adventuring party sort of thinking, is this fight really worth it? Like, do I want to risk it? Can I get an, and it's not like an altruistic decision. It's not like, oh, I want to get, through this adventure without having to kill anybody. It's not that. No. It's literally a mechanical part of the game. Like, you may not want, it may look like a weak enemy, but you guys are just exhausted, or you're wounded, or you're like, just, like psychologically you can't deal with another, like adversary that's an enemy of, that's an agent of the shadow, because you're just going to lose it. Which I don't know, I just love it. It's really fun. Anyway, that's all I got. Probably one of the most elegant RPG combat systems I've ever seen. And I don't say that lightly, because I've seen some really very, very cool streamlined combat systems. But the combination of the theme, the world, and the combat system, and it being done so cleanly, it's a treat. I really love it.
Beautiful game.
It really is. Thanks very much. We'll see you next time.
Cheers.